My parents showed up at my door after 2 decades of silence with tears and an apology. They said they'd been wrong about everything and wanted to make amends. I actually believed them until I found out why they really came back. The doorbell rang on a Tuesday afternoon in March, and when I opened it, I saw two strangers who looked like older versions of my parents. I'm not being poetic. I genuinely didn't recognize them at first. My mother's dark hair had gone completely white. My father had aged in that way some men do, shrunken, softer, less imposing. They stood on my porch holding hands, and my mother was already crying. "Sarah," she said, and that's when I knew for sure. I hadn't seen or spoken to my parents in 20 years. Not since the day they told me that if I married David, I was no longer their daughter. I married David anyway. We had a small ceremony at the courthouse with his parents and our friends. There was an empty space where my family should have been, and I felt it like a missing tooth, something you can't stop touching with your tongue, even though it hurts. David was black. I'm white. That was my parents' entire problem, distilled down to its ugly essence. They'd given me ultimatums, made threats, said horrible things about David that I won't repeat. When I chose him, and of course I chose him, they made good on their promises. I was erased from the family. My younger brother, Tom, was forbidden from contacting me. My childhood photos were removed from the walls. I grieved. I went to therapy. I built a life without them. And now, 20 years later, they were on my porch. "Can we come in?" my father asked. His voice was smaller than I remembered. I should have said no. Every instinct screamed to slam the door. But there's something about seeing your parents after 2 decades, even parents who hurt you, that makes you revert to being that child who still wants their approval. 5 minutes, I said. They came in and stood awkwardly in my foyer, looking around at the photos on the walls. Me and David at the Grand Canyon. Our daughter, Maya, at her high school graduation. Our son, James, at his college acceptance ceremony. 20 years of life they'd missed, captured in frames. My mother made a sound like a sob. "You have children," she whispered. "Had them for a while now," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Maya's 22. James is 19. "We have grandchildren," my father said, and something in his voice cracked. We stood there in silence for what felt like hours. Finally, my mother spoke. "We were wrong." I almost laughed. After 20 years. That's what she led with? "We were wrong," she continued, tears streaming down her face now. "About everything. About David, about cutting you off, about God, Sarah. We were so wrong. And we're sorry. We're so sorry." My father nodded, pulling out a handkerchief to wipe his eyes. "We've wasted 20 years. Missed everything. Your wedding. The births of your children. Every holiday, every milestone. We threw away our daughter because of our own ignorance and prejudice." "What changed?" I asked. My voice sounded distant, like it was coming from someone else. "Your Aunt Linda called us," my mother said. "A few months ago. She'd kept in touch with you, hadn't she?" I nodded. Aunt Linda, my mother's sister, had been the only family member who'd stood by me. She'd been at my courthouse wedding. She'd met my babies. She'd never let me go. She told us what we'd missed. Showed us photos. Told us about Maya's scholarship to medical school. About James's talent for music. About the life you built. My mother's voice broke. And she asked us if we were proud of ourselves for throwing away something so precious over something so stupid. "She called you racists," my father added quietly. She was right. I didn't know what to say. This was the apology I'd fantasized about for years. The acknowledgement I'd craved. And now that it was here, I felt numb. "We can't get those years back," my mother said. "We know that. But we're hoping, we're praying, that maybe we could be part of your life going forward. That maybe you could find it in your heart to forgive us. We want to know our grandchildren. We want to know you. The real you, not the version we invented in our heads." My father reached out like he wanted to touch my arm, but stopped himself. "We're going to therapy. Working on ourselves. We know we can't just show up and expect you to let us back in. But we had to try. We had to at least tell you we're sorry. I looked at these two old people in my foyer, and I saw something I never expected to see: genuine remorse. I need time, I said finally. This is a lot. Of course, my mother said quickly. Take all the time you need. Here, she handed me a piece of paper with a phone number. This is our number. Call us if and when you're ready, even if it's just to yell at us. We deserve that. They left, and I stood in my foyer for 20 minutes, staring at that piece of paper. When David came home from work, I told him everything. He listened, holding my hand, his face carefully neutral. What do you want to do? He asked. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to tell them to go to hell. But part of me, David, they apologized. They actually apologized. They should have apologized 19 years and 11 months ago, he said gently. But I'll support whatever you decide. They're your parents. I called Aunt Linda that night. They showed up today, I said. I know. They told me they were going to try. She sighed. Sarah, honey, I'm not going to tell you what to do. But I will tell you this. They seem genuinely remorseful. They've been going to therapy for months. They've donated to racial justice organizations. They've been trying to educate themselves. It doesn't erase what they did, but people can change. Do you really believe that? I want to, she said. God help me, I want to. I waited a week before calling them. We met for coffee at a neutral location. It was awkward and painful, but they asked about my life. About David's career as an architect. About Maya's plans for medical school. About James's music scholarship. They looked at photos on my phone and cried at what they'd missed. I know it's too late, my mother said, but I want you to know that we're so proud of you. You built a beautiful life. Beautiful children. You're an amazing mother and wife, and we threw that away. We threw you away. Over the next 2 months, we met regularly. Coffee dates became lunch dates. Lunch dates became dinners. They were cautious, respectful, never pushing. They asked about David with genuine interest. They wanted to know about his parents, his culture, how we'd raised the kids. We were so stupid, my father said one evening. We could have had this all along. This family. This love. We chose hate instead. I started to soften. Started to believe maybe this could work. Then they asked to meet Maya and James. I was nervous. The kids knew about their maternal grandparents only in abstract terms. Mommy's parents who weren't nice to Daddy. I'd never gone into detail. Never wanted them to carry that burden. David and I discussed it for hours. They're adults now, David pointed out. Maya's 22. James is 19. They can make their own choices about whether they want a relationship with their grandparents. I talked to the kids separately. Maya was curious but cautious. James was more open, more willing to give them a chance. We agreed to a family dinner at our house. My parents arrived with gifts, thoughtful ones. A first edition medical textbook for Maya. A vintage guitar strap for James. They'd clearly done research, paid attention to what I told them about the kids' interests. The dinner was surprisingly nice. My parents were charming, but not overbearing. They asked questions, told stories from their own youth. My mother even laughed at one of David's jokes, and something in my chest loosened that I didn't realize had been tight. After dinner, we sat in the living room, and my father cleared his throat. There's something we need to tell you all, he said, glancing at my mother. Here it comes, I thought. The other shoe finally drops. We're moving, my mother said. We sold our house in Ohio. We're buying a place about 10 minutes from here. I felt David tense beside me. You're moving here? To California? I asked. We missed 20 years, my father said. We don't want to miss any more. We want to be close to family. To watch our grandchildren thrive. To finally be the parents and grandparents we should have been all along. It was fast. Really fast. But they seemed so sincere. We don't expect to be at every dinner, my mother added quickly. We want to be available. If Maya needs help moving into her apartment for medical school. If James wants to practice music. If you and David want a date night and need babysitters. We're a little old for babysitters, Grandma, James said with a laugh, and my mother's face lit up at being called Grandma for the first time. They moved to California 6 weeks later. True to their word, they didn't overstep. They'd call before visiting. They'd invite us to their new place for Sunday dinners. They attended one of James's college performances. They asked Maya about her MCAT prep. It was 3 months into this new normal when Aunt Linda called me. "Sarah, I need to tell you something," she said, her voice tight. "And you're going to be upset." "What's wrong?" "It's about your parents. About why they really came back." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "Your brother Tom called me. He's pissed at your parents and wanted someone to know the truth." She took a breath. Tom's wife left him. Took the kids. He's in massive debt from some business venture that went south. He's been living with your parents for the past 2 years, and he's not doing well. Drinking, gambling, making their lives hell. Okay, but what does that have to do with me? "Sarah, Tom needs a kidney." The world stopped. "What?" "He's in renal failure. Has been for over a year. He needs a transplant and your parents aren't matches. Neither is his ex-wife. They've been trying to find a donor and—" Linda's voice cracked. "They found out from his medical records that you'd be a likely match. You and Tom have the same blood type, same tissue markers." I couldn't breathe. The therapy, the apologies, moving to California, it was all to get close to you, to soften you up. They're planning to ask you to get tested as a donor. "No," I whispered. "No," they were sincere. They apologized. They've been wonderful. "I know, honey. I know. And maybe part of it is real. Maybe they do regret what they did. But the timing—" "Sarah, Tom was diagnosed 14 months ago. Your parents called me 13 months ago asking about you. They showed up on your doorstep 10 months ago. Do you see the timeline?" I saw it. God help me, I saw it. "They're using me," I said flatly. "I don't know for sure. But Tom seemed to think so. He said your mother told him, 'Don't worry, we'll get her to help. We just need to do this right.'" I hung up and sat there in my kitchen for an hour. When David came home, I told him everything. His face went hard in a way I rarely saw. "Those motherfuckers. We don't know for sure," I said, but even I didn't believe it. "Sarah, think about it. 20 years of silence, then suddenly they're sorry? Suddenly they want to be close? Suddenly they're moving across the country?"
He was pacing now.
I wanted to believe them. I wanted to believe people could change. But this— "Maybe I should just get tested," I said quietly. "If I'm a match, maybe I should just do it. He's my brother." "He's the brother who cut you off too," David reminded me. "Who chose them over you. Who never reached out in 20 years. And now they're all using your kindness, your desire for family, to manipulate you into giving up a kidney." I didn't sleep that night. The next day, my mother called. "Hi, sweetheart. We were thinking of having Sunday dinner this week. Maybe we could talk about Thanksgiving plans? We'd love to host this year." "Actually, Mom, I need to talk to you and Dad. Can you come over this afternoon?" "Of course. Is everything okay?" "We'll talk when you get here." They arrived at 2 p.m., all smiles. I'd asked Maya and James to be present. David stood beside me like a sentinel. "Thanks for coming," I said once we were all in the living room. "I have a question for you." "Anything," my father said. "When were you planning to tell me about Tom?" The color drained from both their faces. "What about Tom?" my mother asked, but her voice was shaking. "About his kidney failure. About how you need a donor. About how that's the real reason you showed up after 20 years. "Sarah, that's not—" my father started. "Don't lie to me." I cut him off. "Not now. Not about this. Aunt Linda told me everything." My mother started crying, but they were different tears than before. These were panicked, desperate. "We do regret what we did," she said quickly. "That part was real. We were wrong to cut you off, wrong about David, wrong about everything. But you wouldn't have shown up if Tom didn't need a kidney." Silence. "Would you?" I pressed. My father's shoulders slumped. "Probably not. Not yet. We were working up to it. The guilt was always there, but it was easier to live with than facing what we'd done. So the apology was fake." "No," my mother said. "No, the apology was real. Everything we said was true. We do regret it. We are sorry. We do want to be in your life. But Tom is our son.
He's sick. He's dying.
And you're his only chance. So, you used my desire for family to manipulate me. You made friends with my children, charmed my husband, wormed your way back into my life, all so you could ask me to give my brother a kidney. When you put it like that, my father started. How else should I put it? My voice was rising now. You abandoned me for 20 years because I married a black man. You missed my wedding, the births of my children, every holiday, every milestone. You let me grieve the loss of my family. And now you want me to undergo major surgery, give up an organ, risk my health and possibly my life, for the brother who also abandoned me. He's your brother, my mother said desperately. He stopped being my brother the day he chose your racism over our relationship. Sarah, please, my father said. We're sorry. We're so sorry for how we did this. But Tom is dying. He's our son. Your brother. Please, just get tested. Just see if you're a match. I already know I'm a match, I said. Same blood type, similar genetic markers. I looked it up after Linda called. I'm probably Tom's best chance for a successful transplant. Hope flared in their eyes. And I'm not doing it. Sarah, my mother gasped. You think you can manipulate me? Use my children as leverage? Pretend to have changed. I was shaking now. You showed me exactly who you are 20 years ago. I was just stupid enough to think people could change. But you haven't changed. You're still the same selfish, manipulative people who valued their prejudice over their daughter.
This is different, my father said.
This is life and death. It was life and death for me too, I said quietly. When I was 22, newly married, pregnant with Maya, and my parents told me I was dead to them. I had horrible postpartum depression after she was born.
Did you know that?
I needed my mother, and she wasn't there, because she chose to not be there. I could have died, Dad. Lots of women with postpartum depression die. But you didn't care about that life and death situation. My mother was sobbing now, but I felt nothing. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You're going to leave. You're going to sell whatever house you bought here and move back to Ohio. You're going to never contact me or my family again. And you're going to live with the consequences of your choices. You'd let your brother die? My father asked, his voice hoarse. I'm not letting him die. His kidney disease is doing that. What I'm doing is refusing to be manipulated by people who have shown me, twice now, that they only value me when they need something from me. But if you're a match, my mother started. Then Tom should have thought about that before he cut me off. Actions have consequences. You all taught me that lesson really well 20 years ago. Consider this me passing that lesson back. Maya stood up. She'd been quiet this whole time, but now her voice was clear and firm. You need to leave. You used us. You used me and James to get to our mother. That's disgusting. We love you. My mother reached for her. No, you don't, Maya said, stepping back. You don't even know us. You used us as props in your manipulation. Real grandparents don't do that. James nodded, standing beside his sister. Mom gave you a chance. You blew it. David opened the front door. You heard them. Leave. My parents looked at me one last time. Sarah, please. He's your brother. He has a son, your nephew. Think about.
I have thought about it, I said.
I've thought about how you people have taken from me twice now. You don't get a third time.
Goodbye.
They left. They actually tried calling a few more times over the next week, leaving desperate voicemails. My mother sent letters. My father showed up once more, and David answered the door and told him if he came back, we'd call the police. Eventually they stopped. Aunt Linda called to check on me. How are you holding up? I'm okay, I said. And I was. Surprisingly, I was. Part of me feels guilty. But mostly I just feel relief. Tom found a donor, Linda said quietly. Someone from a donor registry. He's having surgery next month. Good, I said, and I meant it. I'm glad he'll be okay. But I'm gladder that it's not coming from me. You made the right choice, Linda said. What they did was unforgivable. Here's the thing about forgiveness. It's not always the right answer. Sometimes the right answer is boundaries. Sometimes it's protecting yourself and your family from people who have proven they'll hurt you. My parents taught me that love isn't unconditional. That family will abandon you if you don't meet their expectations. That people will use your vulnerabilities against you. So I taught them something back. That manipulation has consequences. That apologies without changed behavior are meaningless. That you can't erase 20 years of abandonment with 3 months of performance. I have a family. A real family. David, Maya, James, Aunt Linda, my in-laws who loved me from day one. People who chose me not because they needed something, but because they wanted me. That's what family is supposed to be. As for my parents and Tom, I hope they learned something from this. But honestly, I don't really care if they did or not. Because after 20 years of carrying the weight of their rejection, I finally set it down. And I'm not picking it back up. Update: it's been 18 months since I kicked my parents out, and I'm getting a lot of messages asking if I feel guilty or if I've reconsidered. So, here's the full update on everything that's happened. First, the question everyone asks: do I regret my decision? Absolutely not. Not even for a second. Tom's surgery was successful with a donor from the registry. According to Aunt Linda, he's made a full recovery. His kidney function is normal, he's back to work, and he's even reconciled with his ex-wife. They're trying to work things out for their kids. I'm genuinely glad he's healthy. But I'm glad from a distance, and I'm glad it didn't cost me anything. The guilt trips didn't stop immediately, though. About 2 months after I cut them off, my mother showed up at Maya's apartment near her medical school. Maya called me immediately, and I could hear my mother in the background pleading to just talk. Maya told her that if she didn't leave, she'd call campus security. She left, but not before leaving a letter. Maya brought it to me unopened. We burned it together in our fireplace. Didn't read a single word. My father tried a different approach. He reached out to David's parents. Big mistake. My mother-in-law, who is one of the classiest, most gracious women I've ever known, apparently told him in very precise terms that what he and my mother did was morally reprehensible and that he should be ashamed to show his face. My father-in-law, who's usually the quiet one, added that if they came near their family again, there would be legal consequences. I love my in-laws so much. The most manipulative attempt came about 6 months ago. I got a Facebook friend request from a woman I didn't know, Jennifer Miller. Her profile looked normal enough, so I accepted. Within a day, she sent me a long message about how she was a family mediator who specialized in healing broken family relationships and that my parents had hired her to help facilitate a conversation. I looked her up. She was a real mediator, but she specialized in estate planning disputes, people fighting over inheritance. She had no background in family therapy or reconciliation. My parents had literally paid someone to pretend to be a neutral third party to manipulate me into talking to them. I blocked her, reported the profile, and sent her business a 1-star review explaining exactly what she'd done. Last I checked, her practice was getting hammered with negative reviews from people who saw mine. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. But here's the thing that really showed me I made the right choice. About 4 months after everything went down, Aunt Linda told me something that made my blood boil. Apparently, when my parents first learned about Tom's diagnosis, their initial reaction wasn't to reach out to me directly. No, their first instinct was to try to look me up on social media to see if I looked healthy enough to donate. Let me repeat that. Before they even considered apologizing for 20 years of abandonment, before therapy, before any soul-searching, they were evaluating my physical condition like I was livestock. My mother apparently said, "She looks good. Active. She could probably handle the surgery." They weren't coming back because they missed me. They were coming back because I had working kidneys. The therapy they claimed to be in? It was 2 sessions with a pastor from their church who basically told them that family is everything and that I would come around eventually because that's what daughters do. Not real therapy. Just validation seeking. The donations to racial justice organizations? One $50 donation to a general charity fund that happened to mention diversity in its mission statement. They tried to use that as proof they'd changed. Everything Every single thing was calculated to manipulate me into compliance. Now, let me tell you about the life I have instead of the life I would have had if I'd given in. Maya is thriving in medical school. She's in her second year now, top of her class, and she's decided to specialize in oncology. She told me that watching me set boundaries taught her something important about patient advocacy, that sometimes the most caring thing you can do is say no to things that will harm you, even if others pressure you. James finished his degree in music composition. He got signed to an independent label and is working on his first album. He dedicated a song to me called Choosing Yourself. I cried the first time I heard it. It's about knowing your worth and not letting people who hurt you dictate your decisions. It's beautiful. David and I are stronger than ever. Going through this actually brought us closer. He saw me stand up for myself, for our family, for our life together. And I saw him stand beside me without hesitation. We're planning to renew our vows for our 25th anniversary next year. Aunt Linda is helping us plan it. My health is excellent, by the way. Both kidneys functioning perfectly. I'm training for a half marathon, something I definitely couldn't have done if I'd undergone major surgery and donated an organ. As for my parents, last I heard from Aunt Linda, they did move back to Ohio. They sold the house here at a loss because they'd bought it so quickly. Tom lives about an hour away from them now with his ex-wife and kids. According to Linda, family dinners are tense because Tom blames our parents for ruining his chance with me, and our parents blame Tom for putting them in this position. Funny how people who manipulate others always end up turning on each other when the manipulation fails. Aunt Linda asked me recently if I'd ever consider reaching out if they came back with a real apology, one that wasn't motivated by need. I told her honestly, I don't think they're capable of that kind of apology. And even if they were, I don't need it anymore. I spent the first few years after they cut me off desperately wanting their approval, their love, their acceptance. I wanted them to admit they were wrong and beg me to come back. But I don't want that anymore. I don't need their validation. I built a beautiful life without them, and inviting them back into it, even a changed version of them, would be like letting termites into a house I spent 20 years building from the ground up. Some people in the comments have said I'm cruel. That family should forgive family. That Tom could have died, and it would have been on my conscience. To those people I say, Tom had the same 20 years I did to reach out, to apologize, to build a bridge.
He chose not to.
His medical emergency doesn't erase 20 years of choosing our parents' racism over his sister. And to the people who say I should forgive because that's what Jesus would do, or that's what good people do. Forgiveness doesn't mean letting people who hurt you have access to hurt you again. Forgiveness can happen from a distance. I forgive them for being flawed, damaged people who made terrible choices. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It doesn't mean putting myself back in the line of fire. I'm not cruel. I'm just done being a doormat. The most validating thing happened about 3 months ago. Maya came home for a weekend, and we were having coffee on the porch. Out of nowhere, she said, "Mom, I'm really proud of you for what you did with Grandma and Grandpa." I asked her what she meant. "You taught me that I don't owe anyone access to my life just because they're family, that I'm allowed to protect myself. That love without respect isn't really love." She squeezed my hand. I have friends whose families are toxic, and they feel guilty setting boundaries because family is family. But you showed me that's bullshit. Real family doesn't manipulate you. Real family doesn't abandon you and then come back only when they need something. James was there too, and he nodded. Plus, those Sunday dinners were getting kind of boring anyway. Grandpa kept telling the same 3 stories. We all laughed, and it hit me. This is what I protected. Not my kidneys, not my physical health, but this. My kids understanding that they're worth more than what they can give. That their value isn't transactional. That they're allowed to say no to people who treat them as means to an end. That's worth more than any reconciliation. So to everyone asking if I have regrets. None. Not a single one. Tom is healthy. My parents have each other. Aunt Linda is still in my life. And I have David, Maya, James, my in-laws, and the family I chose, the family that chose me back. That's not cruelty. That's not bitterness. That's not holding a grudge. That's just knowing what I'm worth. And I'm worth more than being someone's backup plan. Final update. I probably won't update this again, but I wanted to add one last thing because people keep messaging me. Someone asked, what if your parents are genuinely sorry now? What if they really have changed and you're missing out on a relationship? Here's my answer. Maybe they have changed. Maybe they're genuinely remorseful now. Maybe they lie awake at night wishing they'd done things differently. That's still not my problem to fix. I'm not responsible for their growth, their healing, or their redemption arc. They're adults who made choices, and choices have consequences. The consequence of their choice is that they don't get to be in my life. Could I be the bigger person and give them another chance?
Sure.
But being the bigger person has cost me enough already. It cost me 20 years of wondering if I was good enough. 20 years of grieving a family that was supposed to love me unconditionally. 20 years of explaining to my children why they didn't have maternal grandparents at their school events. I've been the bigger person. Now, I'm just going to be a person who chooses herself. And that's the end of the story. Life is good. I'm happy. My family is thriving. Sometimes the happy ending isn't reconciliation. Sometimes it's just peace. And I finally have peace.